pessoal, muito feliz de estar aqui com vocês hoje, com o Zinner e com o Colin, para a gente conversar um pouquinho mais sobre o lançamento do livro Obsessão pelo Cliente, que tem tudo a ver com a Stone, né? E por isso que a gente está promovendo o lançamento desse livro no Brasil. E boa parte do porquê que tem a ver com a Stone é que o valor número 1 da companhia é o cliente, the reason, né? E eu acho que muito do que o Colin buscou trazer dentro desse livro tem a ver com isso. Como que a gente implementa conceitos importantes para fazer com que toda a companhia, uma série de times, possam trabalhar de maneira focada no cliente. Meu nome é João Lourenço, sou CIO da Stone, estou aqui junto com o Pedro e o Colin, que eles vão se apresentar, para a gente conversar um pouquinho mais sobre esse livro. Pedro, se pudesse...
Boa. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Well, first, it's a pleasure to be here with João and Colin to have a brief conversation in terms of working backwards and have your insights and so forth. I'm Stone's CEO, and again, a pleasure to be here with you and Stone, Colin.
Colin, can you introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure, and thank you for inviting me here to chat with you all today. It's an honor to be here. And so my name's Colin Bryar. I'm one of the co-authors of the book Working Backwards, or Obsessão, pelo, Cliente, in Portuguese. And so I started at Amazon in 1998 and then worked there for about 12 years in a number of different roles. Started in the software development group and then ended up managing our online marketing program, and then spent 2 years working with Jeff Bezos as his chief of staff, and then worked for a subsidiary as the chief operating officer at IMDb at Amazon.
Great, thank you, Colin. Colin, we'd like to start our talk here about the inspiration that made you and Bill to write this book and share with everyone the main concepts of the book.
Sure. So it started about 5 years ago, and Bill Carr, my colleague, and I, we were having dinner one night, and he had just gotten back from a venture capital conference. And in the conference, there's a CEO who raised his hand, and he was a CEO of a very large Fortune 100 company, and said, Amazon, I don't get it. How did they do it? They're into everything from cloud computing to selling, books, digital video. I'm still trying to open my stores one at a time. And as we were eating dinner, we were talking that, one, we get this question all the time: how does Amazon do it? Two is that Bill and I were very fortunate and lucky to have been in the right place at the right time, where we were inventing a lot of the processes about how Amazon works. So we felt we were well qualified to answer that question. And the third one is we had not seen any good comprehensive answer about how does Amazon work. So that's what we set out to do with the book, is really answer the question, how does Amazon work, with the goal of helping the next generation of business leaders, because a lot of the press talks about products that Amazon has built, but not what happened on the inside at Amazon. And so that's why we wrote our book, is just to get this information out in the public dialogue so people could study it. And if they want to use some of these processes, they could go ahead and implement them.
Great. And can you explain more the main concepts behind the working backwards?
Yeah, so to answer the question how Amazon works, we had to figure out how to structure it. At its heart, it's really what Jeff called in one of his shareholder letters was he wanted Amazon to be an invention machine, which wanted to combine Amazon's scale, the things that only large companies could do, with the entrepreneurial spirit of a startup. And so Jeff set out to, over a course of a number of years, to create this invention machine. And really it's a set of surrounding everything, it's the Amazon leadership principles, which is core to everything Amazon does. But then it's really 5 simple processes that also every growing company needs to do. How you hire people, and as you hire people, how you actually increase your velocity at building things rather than getting dragged down by bureaucracy. How you organize into small teams and move fast. And how you communicate and make decisions. At Amazon, we use narratives, written memos, and then there's a process called Working Backwards. It's the title of the book, but it's also a named process on how you invent new products and ideas at Amazon. And the last one is how you measure anything from a small business to a multi-billion-dollar business, with the focus on what we call input metrics. So these are 5 things that every company needs to do, but Amazon looked at those problems and came up with unique solutions that we thought were worthy to write about in the book.
Okay, thank you. Zinner, thinking about Stone reality, can you mention why it's important for us to be part of the release of this book?
I think I'm just going to try to pick up on what Colin is saying, and I use my cheat sheet in here in some ways. And to be truly Amazonian, there are 6 principles, the principles that you just mentioned. And I think for us, as João mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, I think our key driver is really on the reason and the purpose of the company itself, right? The working backwards actually starts in terms of the desired customer experience and how you bring value to shareholders by linking customer experience and shareholders. And I think this is really embedded in the company since its inception. And I think it really makes a difference because the whole decision-making process is embedded in how we enchant customers and how we bring value along the value chain just by doing that. And can I jump in and maybe if you can give us some examples in terms of what were the challenges that you've seen throughout your career within Amazon in terms of this pitfall in terms of shareholder value and at the same time customer enchantment?
Yeah, so there are lots of challenges. Just like any. When I started at Amazon, it was we had just done $147 million in revenue the year before, and there were 500 people total at the company, and so we were growing very, very fast. The very first day I met Jeff, it was my new hire orientation. Actually, he came into the conference room and he said, "At Amazon, we want to build Earth's most customer-centric company." So from the very first day I had met him, that was all in his mind, and he never wavered from that. And he also said, we have the unshakable conviction, which means you can't convince him otherwise, that the interests of customers and shareholders are completely aligned in the long run. And so that really helped us make decisions about, we would look at what's best for the customer, and we knew in the long run that it would build a long-lasting business. But some challenges, it's not always obvious what's in the best interest of customers because, cutting prices to where you cannot afford them and you go out of business, that's not in the best interest of customers or shareholders in the long run. One example is when Marketplace was starting. So Amazon is a retail company. We were all first party, which meant 100% of the goods we sold, we bought from distributors or manufacturers, held them in inventory and sold them. And we were looking at companies like eBay, who were doing very well at the time, and trying to decide, should we be in a marketplace business? And it was not an obvious answer whether a retailer could also be an owner of a marketplace, and if we wanted to let third parties cannibalize one of our businesses. And there's a long controversy about that. And at the end of the day, Jeff said, listen, if we're a customer-centric company, if we want to offer customers the products they want, and if we don't have them, or if our prices are too high, we're going to have another seller on our platform offering the customers. And so that's an example of where you think it may not be in the best interest of shareholders because our biggest business was going to be cannibalized. But so we went from 0% of marketplace sales to now it's upwards of 77 or 80% of units that are sold on Amazon are by third parties, with a very strong first-party business, by the way, too.
Colin, today you are helping a lot of different companies in different industries to implement those concepts. Could you share a little bit about the challenges that these companies are facing on trying to implement those concepts? And looking for all those concepts, which one would be that can promote most impact in one company?
Yeah, so first of all, you don't have to implement all of the processes. They're related, but you can, if you have something that works, keep using it is what we tell people. There's no reason to spend time reinventing the wheel. And I would say we worked with about 50 companies since the book is launched. And the biggest criteria for success that we've looked at is the senior leadership on board with experimenting or making a change with this process, because they're quite different, and they take a little bit of getting used to, and they take some practice, and it takes anywhere from several weeks to months to implement. So that is the biggest single criteria. So if a company says, hey, we're interested in learning more about this, the first question we say is, well, what does your senior leaders in the company think? Are they on board with it? And if they're not, then you probably aren't ready as an organization to make that type of a change. Some of the easier processes to implement are the Amazon bar raiser hiring process. It's relatively straightforward. There's not a whole lot of changes. You're interviewing candidates already. You have a whole workflow. It's just what goes on in those interviews and how you remove bias that changes. Writing narratives is actually, that will just take a couple of months to do, but you have to stick to it to say, we're going to stop doing slide presentations with Google Slides or PowerPoint and do narratives. We caution that the first narratives are not going to be that good. And I personally have read the first 100 or so narratives written at Amazon. I can vouch, and written some of them too, by the way, and I can vouch that they weren't as good, but they get better over time, because you just have to essentially build that muscle memory for your business. Those are some of the easier ones. Some of the ones that I would say take more time, I don't know if they're harder, are discovering your input metrics and then coming up with a process to get that information so you can react and make decisions and build a weekly business review. And then the last one is all around operating cadence. If you plan quarterly or annually, it doesn't matter, but how much effort you put in planning and how you set your initiatives and metrics, and then what you do during the course to course correct over the course of the year or the quarter. That takes a little more time, just because those cycles are either 12 months or 3 months long.
Great, thank you, Colin. That brings one challenge that we have right now, because we want to give more independence for the teams, for them to be more fast, but at the same time, we have to align those teams to go in the same direction. So, Zinner, could you share a little bit what parallel can we bring from this to the challenges that we are facing right now in Stone?
I think this is actually one of the greatest challenges we have as of today. I think the company grew too much over a very short period of time. And I think the challenge we have is that the complexity of the company increased with many cross-sections dependencies. So the challenge is having a bit discipline and at the same time stimulating growth in the entrepreneurial mindset that we have, right? And I think we talked and chatted a bit about this yesterday. And I think what was music for my ears in some ways is we should have short-term targets. It's not like giving a target for the year and let it go, right? You have to have discipline in terms of setting short-term targets and actually engaging with the team to make sure that we're making progress over time on these key initiatives. I think we set at the beginning of the year what we call the Initiatives Management Office. And the idea is really to track and give visibility to the team as a whole. What are the key initiatives and what are the interdependencies among these initiatives? And I think there's one point that you highlighted which caught my attention, was on the leadership principles. And I was looking backwards, and I think that was one of the first town hall meetings we had. And for me, it's important to highlight in here to keep the message flowing, right? So the desired leadership approach, I'm happy if you could share if there was a common view within Amazon, because we set the desired leadership approach. Unified message, walk the talk, discuss, decide, commit, and avoid endless discussions to prove intellectual supremacy, and avoid false yeses. Listen honestly, mind and green heart, and speak up freely, and plan before doing, making sure that you're attacking the right problem. So if you can share a bit in terms of your views of the leadership approach, and are we in the right track in some ways, or?
You're obviously on the right track with the success that you've had so far. So yes, on the right track in my opinion. but I mean, some of those core values are absolutely critical. You need to have the quality of the decisions you make are only as good as the information that you receive. So you need people to speak honestly, open. You need to collect the truth about the situation rather than convince someone that my idea is the right one. And so just that whole truth-seeking mindset. But then at the end of the day, when you make a decision, it's time to stop the discussion. And we call it don't relitigate the same issue over and over again. And so the commit, like disagree and commit is an Amazon leadership principle. That really helps because it encourages debate, but then you know that there's going to be a stopping point where, okay, everyone is on board. And even if it wasn't my first choice, I still need to do all I can to make it successful. So yeah, and I would say those are great because again, the quality of your decisions is only as good as the information that you have coming in there. And so you need to have processes to make sure we get high quality, unbiased information.
Maybe we can do a parallel between the Jeff's shareholder letter that he sent every year to everyone. So the 2005 letter, he said that there are two types of decisions inside the Amazon. Those made by math, that would be by metrics, and those by judgment or intuition in some way. Could you share a little bit more about that? So at sometimes you don't have data. So we can rely on principles and other stuffs.
So yeah, we always talked about, we use the phrase that data trumps judgment. So if you have both, look at the data and you use that to make your decision. And you know, like one example there is the way that Amazon's pages are designed, either in the apps or the website, is they're widgets, and no one owns that real estate. And we constantly at Amazon allowed other teams, if they built something that met a certain bar, they could get a certain percentage of the traffic. And we called it King of the Hill technology, where just behind the scenes we would gather data, and the customer behavior would drive who's going to win that spot. And that's an example of where because you can argue my algorithm is better than this algorithm, or I'm an editor, I can write reviews or recommendations better than someone else can. It's you let the data make that decision. As you said, sometimes you don't always have the data and you need to rely on judgment. Like Amazon Prime is a great example. It was an unpopular decision because we were going to lose a fair amount of money when it first launched. But we asked ourselves, well, what data do we need to collect to convince ourselves that Amazon Prime is worth it, and how long will it take? It turned out that the answer to that, we're trying to change customer behavior over a matter of years, so we would need over a year's worth of data. So you can't do, and we couldn't do an A/B test or an MVP that way. So we just erred on the side of the customer, and then we, as we collected the data over the course of year one and year two, we realized that Amazon Prime was a great way to change customer behavior, to get people who are shopping offline to now shop online. So yeah, it's a mix of data and judgment, but if you have the data, use the data.
Okay, thank you. Still around the decisions and the importance of the metrics, okay? So when you start measuring some process or some product, you're going to start with really good metrics in the beginning, or there is some times to understand, to learn, and over the time, do you think Amazon right now still have on all their process and products good metrics? How this works during
so
the time?
The process can be a messy process, but I would not let that stop you from going down the journey. I think that one thing that doesn't change is with your outputs metrics, those are the outcomes that you want. Just like any process, you have to understand what are the key drivers to that, and then come up with metrics. How do we measure these key drivers? And some of them are easy to get, but then others, you look at it, you thought you had the right metric, but you realize it didn't drive the right outcome. So if we're trying to drive NPS or customer satisfaction, you may find out there's something that customers really cared about that you weren't measuring. So this is a journey, discovering your input metrics. And the most important thing is really to get started, because it's all about a continuous improvement process. it's continuous. So Amazon is still discovering input metrics today, and they work hard at it. Sometimes you'll have a metric that's too high and it's not actionable, and so you have to break it down into different components. The last thing I'll say is we've found that for most complicated businesses, and I would say Stone's business fits here, you can't distill it down into 2 or 3 metrics and say, just with these 2 or 3 metrics, I can understand what's going on. At Amazon, we were not afraid of the number of metrics. So you look at a weekly business review for the retail business at Amazon, or AWS for that matter, it's hundreds of metrics. And so you need to then have a process. How do we look through hundreds of metrics? You don't talk about each one every time. You look at exceptions, use standardized formats, but because one week, one metric may be important, and then another week, another may be out of tolerance, and so you need to focus on that. And so, yes, it's a long process, but I think once you get there, you finally understand what, at a detailed level, drives our business. That then gives you information about what should we build or do next for our customers. So it takes a while to get there, but it's actually quite liberating once you do, because you finally understand and can predict what's going on.
Okay. Now I'm gonna open the space to have some questions from the audience. Of course, Flavio, I knew you have a question.
Hello.
We
Hello.
always have questions, okay?
Hi, my name is Flavio. Just a little bit of context. I'm from the IT department. So when you think about a startup, you have like 20 to 30 people, and everyone is focused on the client, on products from the client, right? When you grow, especially when you exponentially grow, as Zinner said, happened to Stone, you tend to have a lot of wasted time on duplicated work. So you kind of understand the importance of internal products. Let's call it platforms, right? But the company is made of people, right? And if you don't have the right incentives, performance reviews aligned with what you want, you're gonna have bad behavior, right? The problem is when you have platforms, how do you measure the result of it? Because the victory of a platform is when the client is victorious, right? Victorious, I don't know. But how do you make a performance review of that? Because the impact is not directly from the person that was working on the platform. The impact is only seen through a product that uses the platform, right? But the platform is optimizing maybe several products from the company. So it is very important, but how do you create an incentive, a performance review system to actually measure that? And that's the first question. The second question is kind of connected, because I remember a famous message that Bezos said that everyone should do that system thinking about exposing their system to the client. So I kind of think that implicit, that says that many systems at Amazon are developed for internal use, right? But to do that, that system needs to have all the dependencies, all the basic dependencies, let's say authentication, the payment checkout, all of these basic systems for them to work. When he said that, all of these systems were already present, or the developer had to do everything that was like around it just to get his API or his system up. So these are the two questions.
Okay, so I'll try to answer the first one and then the second one. But so for an internal, something like developer DevOps or developer operations, or if you're developing a core platform, you still have a customer. Your customers just happen to be the other software developers in the company. So in that respect, how you measure performance, it's no different than a customer-facing one. So if I'm in DevOps, my customer are Amazon developers, and my goal is to reduce the time to deploy an application once it's built from 5 days to 30 minutes by the end of the 12-month period. So I've got one, a SMART goal, specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time bound. So when the 12 months are up, I know if I've achieved my goal or not. I know who my customers are. And then going into the planning period, I know what are the key problems I'm trying to solve for developers in the company to do that. So you don't have to trace it all the way to, but how much revenue does it generate? Where that happens is in the planning, you want to say, how much is it worth to us? How many people or dollars are we going to put to this effort to have this impact to be more productive? So you have to make some judgment there about what is our investment level. But once you make that investment level, it's going to disagree and commit. If you think, why do we have 5 people in DevOps and we need 50? Well, we've already said we've got 5. So, and here are the goals. So in that case, it just doesn't work any different. In terms of the second question, I'll try to answer that about, and if I didn't, let me know, but we started off building one monolithic code base. And so when you could make a change on the website that would actually break something in the fulfillment center, and because there's so many dependencies there. And we had tried cleaning up the code base, we had different projects. We finally realized that we should view dependencies with skepticism and treat them as defects. And so if you do that, we call it like dependencies. I like to say they're like taxes. You want to minimize them. You can never get rid of them. So you can never have completely autonomous teams, but you want to get rid of as many dependencies as possible. That's hard, but each team had to work to take their dependencies, know what they are, and then slowly remove them. For us, it took a couple of years to finally get to where we wanted to, but we started with the easiest ones first, and that had the least dependencies, so we could learn what does it mean to operate an independent system where you're just exposing your interface or your APIs to your internal customers. We got better at that, built some new technology, shared our knowledge, and then you went forward. So removing those dependencies, there's no easy way. And if they've been piling up for years, it will take a while to get rid of them. But this is a case where I've seen that the teams that take the time to remove the dependencies before they keep building and creating more, they're slowing down in the beginning, but those are the teams that move fastest measured over a period of 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, because they now don't have to talk to everyone when they want to make a change to their software. So I'm not sure if that answered the question. Okay.
More questions? Anyone? We have one here. Leo.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Pedro made a question about how to balance shareholder and the customer. I would like to add, how do you suggest that the leader could improve the team beyond the incentives? Which kind of behavior you suggest that the lead to keep the team performing high? About the team, how to keep the team incentive beyond the incentives? Which kind of behaviors to keep the environment productive?
So
I think not. The question is, it's more, imagine that you set the goals for the year, right? And once you reach the goals, how you keep pushing and keep the team motivated in going beyond the initial threshold.
So part of that actually stems from an organization's core values or leadership principles. And some of Amazon's leadership principles, customer obsession, ownership and long-term thinking. Think big is another one. Whenever I would personally show something to Jeff, hey, that's great. When is it going to be 10 times as big as it is today? And you're like, okay, you take a deep breath, pat yourself on the back, but then get back to work. So part of it comes from you want to select people to Stone who live these leadership principles, because these leadership principles are what make your company unique and different, which also means that doesn't mean Stone is the best place for every employee. I think you want to find the employees who agree with those leadership principles and act those out on a daily basis. And so you have to have a deliberate hiring process. that helps a ton, because if you have someone who just has a different value system than your company, they're typically not going to last that longer, and you're not going to be able to motivate them over the long run. So those are a couple of things, but you're right. You still have to be very clear on the goals. You're setting the goals, and when Jeff said, what is Amazon's culture about? He talked about innovation, customer obsession, long-term thinking. But the last thing he said was pride in operational excellence. And I thought, okay, well, what does that mean? And he said, it means getting the little things done right, even when no one is watching. Because most of the work that you do, your team may not even see it, and certainly the whole company or customers may not see it directly. And so that has to come from within, and you need to select people who really want to be their best, no matter if someone's looking over their shoulder or not.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's kind of an ownership culture in some ways. And at the same time, one way of actually doing this is if you set the bar higher, then you're actually going to get the most smart people, and people will challenge themselves over time, every time, right? So there is a former CEO of a beverage company that he said, if you hire mediocre people, you set the bar low. But if you hire extremely smart people, you keep challenging yourself over time. So I think that's the right way to do it, right?
Yeah.
The last question. Okay.
Working backwards is a masterpiece. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
If you have to prioritize, and I know it's a little bit difficult, but if you have to choose only one topic, only one advice, one hint, what would be your choice?
Well, it would be a really short book if I just said there's only one thing that's stands above everything else. But if I had to, it comes back to customer obsession, and your customers, first of all, they're the ones giving you the money, so. In the long run, that's going to build a great business if you serve your customers well. So, and not all companies work this way. Some companies are fast followers. They look at what's going on, and they're good at that. But you have to change your strategy every time when your competitors change your strategy, and changing strategy is hard. Customer focus also strives for you to be your best every day. Like Prime, it was a big effort to get Prime for 2-day delivery, and one of the most common requests we got right after it launched, like the day after it launched, was, "Where's the 1-day free delivery button?" And once you do 1 day, hey, can I get it same day? So your customers are always going to be, Jeff calls them wonderfully dissatisfied, which pushes you to be a better person. And even if you're number one in the market, your customers don't care, so you strive to get better and better. And a lot of companies that are number one in their market share, they kind of rest a little bit. We call it, take your foot off the gas pedal. And you don't want, if you're customer focused, you can't do that. So that's the one thing I would do. But there are other things too.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we don't have much time, so thank you, Colin, to come to Brazil to share your thoughts, your experience with us. Thank you, Zinner, to come here also for the chat. Thank you all that came here to see us, and you that you are watching us. Thank you, and I really recommend this book for you, and thank you all.
Thank you, Colin.
Oh,
Pleasure.
thank you so
very
much.
much.
Thanks.
Thank you all.